If you want to learn how to take this kind of photos, if you want to learn long exposure photography, trust me, this video is for you. Welcome to my channel, and finally welcome to my long exposure photography course. This course is made of 5 classes. We will have a class per month, since I want to give you enough time to absorb and practice. Yes, you will need to practice, as I would like this to be a very interactive course where after each class I will give you a photo assignment. And in the following class, I will select some of your work and show it to the rest of the community. But I will tell you more a little later. Today, we will talk about equipment, technique, and a basic workflow that will get you started with long exposure photography. I promise you that at the end of this video, you will have all the tools to take a proper long exposure photograph. But the very first thing I want to share with you is why I love and why I use long exposure photography so much. You know I love nature and landscape photography. And as I said multiple times on this channel, with my images, what I try to achieve is my interpretation of a place. The mood that I had when I took that image, my connection with that location. These are all aspects that to me are more important than just the description of the place. And long exposure photography helps me a lot to do just that. Long exposure photography also helps me to simplify my composition. Very often landscapes are very busy, and by smoothing the water or painting the clouds, I feel that my composition becomes a lot cleaner and more minimalistic. Lastly, long exposure photography gives me the chance to see time. I can transform a scene into something that our human eye cannot see. So mood, minimalism and surrealism are the 3 reasons why almost all my images are actually long exposures. So let's go into the equipment now. What do you need to take long exposure photographs? It is granted that you will need a camera. And you will need a camera that will allow you to control your shutter speed. Also, you want to have a camera that will have the bulb mode available. And I will tell you more about this in a little bit. Then you will need a very sturdy tripod. The camera cannot move during the exposure period. So make sure to have a good tripod with you. It is also very useful to have a remote shutter release in order not to touch the camera and also to take very long exposure over 30 seconds while using the bulb mode of your camera. But the most important thing that you will need to take long exposure photography is a good neutral density filter system. This long exposure photography course is sponsored by NiSi. And NiSi sent me these 2 filter kits to use for this course. And I'm very excited because I heard a lot about the quality of these filters, but I never had the chance to use them. So finally the time has come. I'm going to tell you what is in these 2 filter kits, but since this is a long exposure photography course, I also want to explain what a neutral density filter is and how it works. A neutral density filter is like sunglasses for your camera. Like your sunglasses allow you to keep your eyes open and not to squint on a bright sunny day, placing a neutral density filter in front of your lens, just like so, will reduce the amount of light that reaches the camera sensor. And this will allow you to extend your shutter speed. The darker is the filter, the longer you will be able to lengthen your shutter speed. And the darkness of these filters, or more appropriately, the density of this filter, is measured in stops. One stop will reduce by 50% the amount of light that reaches the center, so you will be able to actually double the exposure length. Usually ND filter comes in 3 stops, 6 stops, 10 stops and up to 15 stops. With a 15 stops ND filter you can take long exposure photos even in a bright sunny day. And by increasing our exposure length we are able to capture the smoothing of the water, the movements of the clouds, creating these beautiful effects which would be impossible to reproduce in post-processing. Neutral density filters can be either circular, and this, as you saw, is a screw-on which will not need any holder, any filter holder, or they can be squared. And in this case, they will need a filter holder. You will need to use a proper adapter ring for the thread size of your lens. In this case, I have a 77mm lens. The professional kit comes with 3 adapters, 67, 72 and 77. Once you have attached the adapter, you can screw on the first part of the filter holder, which you will also screw on. Here you could actually place a circular polarizer which comes with the kit. As you can see, I'm screwing this on as well. And then I will be able to change the polarization by using these little wheels on the side of the filter holder. And to set my square filters, instead I will need the second part of the filter holder, which I will set on top. And I will secure it by screwing the upper knob like so. And then I can easily set my square filter. Just like so. The beauty of this system is that I can use up to 3 different square filters and the circular polarizer at the same time. The smaller kit comes in this little pouch. There are 4 filters inside, a 3 stops, a 6 stops circular polarizer, a 10 stops and a 15 stops. As you can see, this kit is very small and very light. Super convenient. You can also attach these to your tripod leg by using this Velcro in the back. Pretty cool. The bigger kit is a lot more complete, is a little heavier and a little bigger, of course. It comes in this pouch, which you can also attach to your tripod. And in this kit, I have a 3 stops, a 6 stops, 10 stops, and a 15 stops solid ND. Here I also have 3 graduated ND filter, a 3 stops soft ND, a 2 stops medium ND, and I'm very excited about this one because I never used it before, a 3 stops reverse ND where the darkest part of the filter is actually right in the middle of the filter. I also want to mention that this kit comes with a neutral night, which will help to eliminate light pollution if you are taking astrophotography or any kind of photography at night. And now that we have all we need, let's have a look to a basic technique and a simple workflow that will allow you to get started with long exposure photography. So I'm going to show you my workflow from the studio in order for you not to miss any single step. So let's simulate the scenario on the field. Once I found my composition, I will make sure that my ball head is leveled, and I will place my camera on top of my tripod. And the first thing I will do is to take a first shot to establish my base shutter speed. And to do so, I will set my camera mode in aperture priority, as I want to be in control of which aperture to use for my lens. Usually, if the conditions will allow me, I will use the sharpest aperture possible for my lens. And in this case, with my 20mm lens, I like to use f8. I set my ISO to the lowest ISO possible. For my Nikon D10 is ISO 64. And then I will actually take the focus. And it's not going to matter if you use autofocus or manual focus. What matters is that you focus before putting the filters in front of your lens. Then I will finally take my shot. If the exposure looks good, if the histogram is not clipping, if the image is not too dark, that will be my base shutter speed for my long exposure. At this point, I will need to decide which filter to use and how long my exposure should be. And this will be actually the topic of the next video of this course. But for the sake of this video, we decided that we are going to use a 10 stops ND filter. With the help of an ND calculator app, I will input my base shutter speed, I will input the filter density, 10 stops, and as a result I will have my long exposure length. Now, before setting my filters in front of the lens, I will make sure that my autofocus is off. I will switch from aperture priority to manual mode. I will make sure that my viewfinder is closed, because I don't want to have any light leak through the viewfinder. This is not an issue if you're using a mirrorless. And now I can finally set my filters in front of the lens. It is a very good habit to place the filter on the filter holder before setting the filter holder in front of your lens, because we have a lot more control in doing things right here, and we don't want to risk that our filter will fall and break in front of us. I will make sure that the filter is properly placed, no light leaking from any side of the filter, and then I can finally set it in front of my lens. I will lock it from this knob and I'm ready to go. So it's now time to set our shutter speed. We are in manual mode. I didn't touch the aperture, I didn't touch the ISO, they are staying the same, f8 ISO 64. I'm just switching my shutter speed from 1/30 to 30 seconds. And actually 30 seconds is the maximum shutter speed that my camera allows me to use. If my shutter speed is longer than 30 seconds, I will need to set the bulb mode and use the remote shutter release. But since in long exposure photography it is very critical to avoid any possible camera shake, I strongly recommend to use the remote shutter release in any case. As an alternative, if you don't want to use the remote shutter release, you can set a delay shutter in your camera so that the exposure will actually start a few seconds after you actually touched the shutter button. But I usually prefer to use the remote shutter release. Since I'm using a DSLR which has a mirror, I also like to set my camera on mirror lock up. With the mirror lock up, the first time you touch the shutter button either from the camera or from your shutter release, you will hear the mirror moving up, but the exposure is not starting yet. And at the second time that I push the shutter button, the exposure will actually start. And so we are going to avoid a possible internal camera shake. If you're using a mirrorless, there is no mirror, so mirror lockup is not needed. During the exposure, we need to step away from the tripod, step away from the camera, avoid to touch anything. This is a great time to enjoy the scenery, which is also one of the reasons why I love this long exposure photography journey. We are not only slowing down our shutter speed, we are also slowing down the pace of our entire photography process, which is great. And this is the basic workflow of my long exposure photography. Of course, then I will review my image and make sure that the exposure length I picked was actually the most appropriate for my scene. Usually I try to arrive at my location as soon as possible in order to have the time to explore and experience different exposure length, so that when the light is right, I have a clear idea of which filter and exposure length to use for my shot. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I want this course to be very interactive. I want to see your photos, I want to see your work, and here we go with the very first photo assignment. And this is very simple. I like you to post 2 images, one without filter, one with filter. And I would like you to use an exposure length of 30 seconds. You can post your images on my 𝗟𝗏𝗪𝗏 Facebook group, where I created a topic called Long Exposure Photography Photo Assignment 1. So if you post on the group, remember to add the topic to your photos. You can also post your images on Instagram. Use the hashtag @𝗟𝗏𝗪𝗏 and the hashtag LEP_photoassignment1. You will have about 3 weeks for your assignment, because in 4 weeks I will actually select some of your work and show it off to the rest of the community. And with this, we are done for the first class. In the next video of this course, we will talk about how to choose different ND filter and how to select different exposure length. I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope that you find it useful. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, but especially let me know if there is any topic that you like me to talk in the next videos of this course. Hit the like button if you want to support this channel. I can see the 100,000 subscriber mark, so if you didn't subscribe yet, I really appreciate if you will do it now. But nevertheless, thanks for watching and I will see you in the next video.